Welcome back to All About Money. Today we're speaking with Walter Tsui, the co-founder of recruitment platform CareER, which helps university graduates with disabilities or special education needs find employment. Now, Walter, why don't you tell us about how and why you started CareER?
So actually I started CareER since because I am a person with vision impaired. I discovered my vision impaired since I am 3 years old, and I am lucky enough to stay in a mainstream school. But I think one reason is because they have no excuse to kick me out, because I am not always in the least academic achiever in the class. So actually I had a very good experience in primary school and secondary school. And until I went to the university in 2008, I noticed it was having no support for people with disability at all. Actually, I need to run to different departments in order to sort out my studies in the campus. For example, examination arrangement and even those elective courses. So the loneliness inspired me to think about how come we do not have a peer support network as a student union and alumni union with other kind of disabilities with the same experience in the university. So the most important thing, another thing is, I know it is a tough journey, even though I had a degree in economics. So since year one, I already trying hard to find internship. So I went to Germany to do an internship and then come back to Hong Kong. I had two internship opportunity with the two investment banks. So a lot of the people would say, wow, you have a good CV. Yeah, my CV is not bad, but I took more than half a year in order to find my first job, and eventually I got a headhunter's friend, placed my CV into a construction firm, and eventually I can start my career in HR profession. So I think I'm a person who's quite lucky, but I know a lot of our members, a lot of our friends and peers are fighting into their own battle to develop their own career. So eventually in 2013, I grouped together with another two founders and a group of higher educated people with disabilities to set up CareER to actually help our juniors and our peers to find the right job place.
Right. Now, we have a disability population in Hong Kong of more than 500,000 people, and yet less than 8% of them manage to reach higher education, tertiary levels. Tell me about what you think our education system is most lacking in terms of supporting these students in achieving that.
So I think like a lot of the other, actually any young people, but people with disabilities are lacking of like alumni experience, because according to a lot of psychology research, and actually we noticed that young people live up to the alumni, the senior, with the similar disabilities and body conditions. So we actually noticed that before CareER come on board, and actually there's not at all any channels for our alumni to share our experience to the juniors. So right now we're trying to step into the senior secondary school to allow our alumni to share the experience to the secondary school students, so that when they are choosing their subject, they will not limit themselves. So actually right now we have over 150 of our graduates with disabilities already got jobs through CareER, and then we created more than like 230 successful placement already. So I think those are very important experience and skill sets can be transferable to the young.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. What about Hong Kong's accessibility in terms of being able to access the city from living conditions, a living environment to workplaces? What are your thoughts on that?
So I think according to our understanding, research, and when we visited other countries, and actually comparing to Asia Pacific, Europe, and the America, Hong Kong is such an accessible city in terms of the hardwares. Every single traffic lights, we have the sound, And the tactile guide path is all equipped in the public transportation. MTR station would have the elevators, and all the buses actually is accessible to people with disability with the audio announcement and all those. But for Hong Kong, it's coming to the people understanding. You can see a lot of the people on wheelchair wait a long queue, but more than like 10 minutes or half an hour, they couldn't get into the elevators in the MTR station to go up to the concourse. And the employers actually don't understand about people with disabilities and never thought of hiring people with disabilities. And I think that is a lot of the lack of understanding from the people is the key for Hong Kong.
All right, so what is CareER doing about that then?
So we are trying to doing a lot of the social media campaign. So actually we list out actually a lot of our members' stories because we do not want to heroize any persons with disabilities here. And instead, we want to grow the whole community, which we have a lot of different talents. We have different strengths. And some of our people with visual impaired, they work as a data scientist. Our member actually with mental illness working in an IT company. People who have autism actually working in the university HR team. So actually our members are very talented and trying to share with the public that we have different angles, different aspects, different talents. So on the other side, we're trying to research and list out, because we have over 100 employers already hired our members, which they have accumulated a comprehensive amount of best practices coming from multinational company, local conglomerates, SME, and early startup and social enterprise. And we're trying to, we hope we could be able to allocate more resources and get more resources from the society to do those research and list out those business cases on the social media, right. And which is very important to encourage employers.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now when we talk about differently abled persons, well, often we focus on people with physical disabilities. What about people with invisible sort of disabilities? How do you cope with that?
Yep. So I think CareER services actually we do not focus on a disability. We focus on ability. So actually, we serve all kinds of people with different kind of disabilities, including like people who have mobility impaired, hearing impaired, and visual impaired. And also we support people who have high functioning autism, mental illness, chronic illnesses, and other learning difficulties. So I think when we are talking about invisible disabilities and special needs, actually it is a little bit tougher to do the job placement, because when our candidates actually look totally the same as other people, and they had an interview, and then the conversation was so good, and then the employers actually provide us with good feedback, but we need to always remind the employers, the line managers, their child, and the people who work in the same team to be aware of some of the special feature on those invisible disabilities and mental illnesses. So that's we need to have a lot of the training, especially when people cannot see the special needs on just the surface.
Mm-hmm. Right. I imagine that is something that we need to get going, like this conversation, this dialogue about all these different types of disabilities, which we don't really have commonly in Hong Kong. So it's great that people are being educated about this. Now, very briefly before we go, why don't you tell us some tips for bosses and for co-workers about being able to work in a disability inclusive environment?
So I think first of all, we actually based on our ability, not disabilities. And we encourage employers to hire based on meritocracy, and which actually we want to place the right talents in the right career. So another thing is to not have prejudgment, because people who are having like mobility impairment, different kind of disabilities, they all have different unique abilities and limitation. So I think the same as anyone else, when you're talking about you're managing your own team, you always need to understand about people's strengths and weaknesses. So do people with disabilities as well. So another thing is, the most important thing is we make sure the accessibility and the assessment, which offer the same assessment to anybody with different kind of disabilities.
Right. Thank you so much for that. Basically, letting go of bias is number one in terms of being inclusive. Well, thank you so much for that, Walter. That was Walter Tsui, founder of CareER. And with that, we wrap up this edition of All About Money. We'll be back with more next week here on HKIBC. See you then.